At the second step of Mount Everest, on the northeast ridge, at an altitude of 28,250 feet, Bill Burke is crouched behind a rock to shield his body from the sheets of ice blowing horizontally all around him. His eyes are encased in frozen shards of ice, making it difficult to see and painful to clear with the swipe from his expedition glove. As soon as he stops moving, his body begins to shake and convulse uncontrollably from the frigid minus 50-degree weather. And he asks himself the question all high-altitude climbers ask in that circumstance. Does he continue moving up, or does he go down to the safety of a lower camp on the mountain? And does he still have what it takes to reach the summit? Climbing Mount Everest is one of the most difficult physical challenges in the world. So why would Bill Burke, a man in his 70s, risk his life in such a way? For the singular experience of standing on top of the world and for the love of his grandson, Ollie.
Yes, I have an 11-year-old grandson. His name is Oliver Dillon. One of the things we do is on Sundays, I pull him in a trailer behind my bike and we go on 40 to 50 mile bicycle trips because he loves the outdoors, he loves the motion and movement, and he has a very severe disability. We don't have a diagnosis yet for his condition. It most resembles a syndrome called Angelman syndrome. And he and I have the closest bond that any two human beings can have in the world. But he inspires me by how hard he tries to reach his potential. Little Oliver, it can be said, climbs Mount Everest every single day of his little life.
It's fun to see how much he lights up to my dad. Like, you can tell how much he adores my dad. And the minute my dad comes in, it's like he just lights up.
Shortly after my grandson Oliver was born, and we were told that he would have a lifelong disability, I promised his parents, my daughter Amy and her husband Simon, that I would do everything in my power to help him reach his full potential and to help him have a happy, satisfying, and fulfilling life. And over the years, I've done everything in my power to keep that promise.
Angelman syndrome causes severe intellectual and developmental delay and often seizures. There is no cure.
One of the reasons I've undertaken these climbing adventures is because of my training partner Oliver, who has the Angelman syndrome. And I don't climb so much to raise money to fund Angelman syndrome research or other research into disabilities, although if that happens, it's a good thing. But what I'm trying to do is, through my website and through my climbing and through the talks that I give, to raise awareness of the needs of the disabled.
For over 40 years, Bill Burke was a corporate lawyer, just dreaming about what he would do in retirement. He lives in Southern California and has been married to the love of his life, Sharon, for over 50 years. They have 4 children and 14 grandchildren. Bill decided it was important to take up some kind of safe and sedentary hobby like golf or tennis. After much thought and research, he settled on high-altitude mountaineering.
Alpine climbing is a very demanding sport, and I didn't start until after I retired at age 60 from practicing law. And the reason is it's not just a demanding sport in terms of the time away from home and from work, but it's also risky. And I didn't want to take those risks when I had a young family.
When he started climbing, Bill's always done everything to the fullest, to the max.
So I took a climbing course in Washington, and that same year I went back and climbed Mount Rainier. One thing led to the other, and I continued climbing year after year. But it's been a big factor in my success, is knowing that my family trusts me and supports me.
After a while you catch on that he's traveling the continents and hitting all of them.
After Mount Rainier was Mount McKinley in Alaska, the highest mountain in the North American continent.
That was a great trip, a fabulous trip, one of my favorites. It's one of the most difficult of the 8 summits because it's in a region that is extremely cold because of its proximity to the North Pole. You get very extreme and unpredictable weather. It has the highest vertical gain of any of the 8 summits. And the other thing about McKinley that makes it very challenging is that you don't have porters and Sherpas to carry your gear.
He went on to climb the highest summit on every one of the 7 continents.
There's actually 8 summits, and let me explain that if I may. There are 7 continents, and each continent has its own highest mountain. But there's a dispute about whether Australia is a continent or whether it's part of Australasia or Oceania, which includes the islands of New Zealand, some of the islands in the Pacific, and places like Indonesia. So if Australia is a continent, as some claim, then the highest mountain is a little walk-up called Kosciuszko, which is just 7,300 feet high. If, on the other hand, Australia is part of Australasia, then the highest mountain is in Papua New Guinea, and it's the very difficult, extreme rock climb. And so there's actually, since there is a dispute about whether Australia is a continent or is part of Australasia, I did both Kosciuszko and the Karstens Pyramid in the same trip. So I've actually climbed 8 summits on 7 continents.
In addition to Mount McKinley, Karstens Pyramid, and Kosciuszko, Bill climbed Aconcagua in South America, Kilimanjaro in Africa, Elbrus in Russia on the continent of Europe, and Vinson Massif in Antarctica.
That trip is distinctive because you fly into Punta Arenas, Chile, and you land there and spend some time there getting all your gear together, and then you board an Aleutian Russian troop carrier jet to fly from Punta Arenas, Chile to the continent of Antarctica. It's about a 5-hour trip, and you land on the blue ice at Patriot Hills, about 8,000 feet deep. The ices are 8,000 feet thick. And when you disembark from this plane, you go down just like a troop carrier. They open up the back and you go down and you stand on that continent, and it's like standing on planet Mars. You feel like you're on another planet. You can feel like you can almost see the curvature of the Earth.
It was on that trip that Bill also met celebrity climber Vern Tejas, world record holder and guide.
I met Bill Burke down in Antarctica. He's one of my climbers on Vinson expedition. He's a quick learner, and we were able to have lots of fun together. As you know, Vinson is very remote, very cold, and very inhospitable, but Bill is just great there and quite warm personality, so it didn't feel quite so cold.
When we were in Antarctica, Vincent and Asif, we were at base camp one morning, and it was probably minus 40 degrees inside the dining tent, the cook tent. And the guides were boiling some water to make some tea for us and some porridge for breakfast, and Vern had a cup of boiling water in his hand. And he said to us, "Come on outside, I want to show you something." So we walked outside, and he took that boiling water and he threw it up into the atmosphere, and it exploded in the atmosphere. It just vaporized, and it created a cloud that just sort of slowly drifted off. And we all got a big kick out of that.
2007 was Bill's first attempt at climbing Mount Everest. And though he didn't make the summit that year, he reconnected with an old friend.
I was coming down the very steep vertical Lhotse face, and I had my camera with me, and I had all my photos on a memory stick in that camera. And I sat down on my backpack, took my camera off, and took some photos of the mountain, of the Lhotse face. And I put the camera on the backpack, and as I was sitting there, I stood up, and that camera fell off my backpack and rolled down the steep Lhotse face, probably 2,000–3,000 feet.
I saw a black tumbling object coming down. I yelled as loud as I could, "Rock!" And everybody down below looked up, and it tumbled on by. Nobody got hit by it, and we were very happy that no one did. And as we climbed down a little bit later, one of my climbers actually dropped his camera. I said, "Don't worry about it. It'll probably get stuck in the Bergschrung at the bottom of the Lhotse face." It's about 22,000 feet. So when we got down there, I put him on a rope, and we walked around and looking for his camera, and instead found Bill Burke's camera. I knew it was Bill's because I turned it on, and there was his photos from high on the mountain.
The next morning, Vern came by yelling my name. What he had done is, when he got to the bottom of the Lhotse face, he crawled up to the Bergstrom, which is at the bottom of that Lhotse face, looking for his client's cameras. And he found a camera, looked at it, turned it on. It actually turned on, and he realized this was not his client's camera, and he saw a photo of me, and he realized he had found my camera at the bottom of the Lhotse face, and he gave it back to me, and I was so happy because all my photos were on that camera. I've been forever grateful to Vern for what he did for me on Everest that year.
Bill finally summited the big one, Mount Everest, on May 23, 2009, at the age of 67, becoming the oldest American to reach the summit. It was a crowning achievement.
The third time on Everest was in 2009, and that was just the most thrilling, exciting experience I've ever had in the mountains. Everything went right. It was, we had the right kind of weather. It was quite a challenge. There were a lot of difficulties and obstacles, but it was a great trip, and that was the year I succeeded.
Bill is a person with an immense amount of determination and focus. Just taking the example that it was in fact on his third attempt that he finally made it to the top of Mount Everest and became the oldest American to do so.
Now Bill Burke is embarking on yet another world record attempt to become the first person to achieve a back-to-back summit on the world's highest mountain, Mount Everest.
My goal for Everest 2012 was to do a double summit. And by that I mean a summit from both the south side in Nepal and the north side in Tibet.
Climbing Everest on its own is a big challenge. And doing a double summit, I don't think it's twice as hard. I think it's 10 times as hard. Setting up the logistics, getting 2 good weather windows, it's very lucky to be able to do that in one season. Staying healthy for longer, being optimistic about the second climb after you came down safely the first time. I think it's really hard, and it's definitely a much bigger challenge than just twice.
Bill is my idol. Here he is at age 70, not giving up. And so I'm only 56, so I'm a kid compared to my mentor and idol, Bill Burke.
He's looking for double summit. Looks like he's beating my record.
70-year-old, that is pretty amazing. What's amazing, Bill wants to do the double summit. Like, one's not enough.
I think for anyone at the age of 70 to be attempting Everest at all, it's not something that people shouldn't do. It's just something which I think is magnificent.
For Bill, this new adventure starts in Kathmandu, Nepal, where he meets with Asian Trekking, the outfitters for his record-breaking attempt.
Asian Trekking organizes treks and expeditions both on the north and the south side, which is to say both on the Nepal side and the Tibet side.
In addition to organizing expeditions, Asian Trekking takes an active role in programs to help the community and the environment.
One of the main ones, the main programs that we run is the Cash for Trash program on the Eco Everest expedition. And the idea is very simple. It's trying to get every mountaineer involved in bringing trash back down off the mountain. And the incentive is just, like cash for trash. So, but it goes more than just a financial incentive of bringing cash down. What we really see is that the people who are involved in the cleaning up also have some sense of responsibility at a later time. And so they themselves refrain from doing any more damage, or shall I say, littering anymore.
Kathmandu is where Bill first meets with members of the team who will help him in his attempt. They are mountain climbing rock stars in their own right.
I decided I didn't want to go on a guided trip. I didn't want to have guides with me the whole time. I wanted the freedom and independence to move on my own with my Sherpa when I wanted to. I didn't want to be tied down to going with a team when the team went.
Pertemba is from Kumjung, and he is a legend in himself, which is, he's the first person to climb, I believe still the only person to have climbed Everest from 3 different routes. Pertemba is now 66 years old, but he doesn't look a day over 45, I think. He's still stronger than I am, which is a bit embarrassing sometimes if I have to keep up with him while we're trekking. Appa has been with us for more than 15 years now. Appa started to break his the world records when he was working for Asian Trekking. Having somebody with his experience of having climbed 21 times to the top of Mount Everest is an enormous asset.
After a few days of sightseeing, provisioning, and preparing in Kathmandu, Bill and his team take off for the first part of the trek.
We flew from Kathmandu up to Lukla Airport, the little village of Lukla, which by the way is the most dangerous airport in the world because it's a very short runway and it's uphill, so the plane is landing uphill on a short runway. But we got up there okay, got to Lukla, and we started our 35-mile trek from Lukla to Everest Base Camp.
Right after Bill and his team passed through Manju, they stopped at the checkpoint for entering the Sagamantha National Park, which is home to Mount Everest, checked in, and continued to their next stop.
And then we moved on up from Manjo to Namche Bazaar, spent a couple of nights there. That's a great place to stop because it's a former trading capital between Nepal and Tibet. And so there's a lot of activity there, great tea houses, good food, good lodging, and good souvenir shopping. So we stopped at Namche Bazaar and spent a couple nights there.
Then the group moved up to Tingbuche, where Bill and Ellen attended one of the services at a Buddhist monastery. Then they moved up through Feriche and Lobiche. Finally, Bill and his team reached Everest Base Camp.
We made it to Everest Base Camp. Fine, hell of a journey getting up here.
Bill, welcome home.
Hey, Hon. Look at this place.
And that's
Yeah.
it's awesome.
There, they find their tents have already been set up for them.
My home, yes. Yes, it's beautiful. I love it.
Allen's tent is next to fellow expedition team member Bud Allen, who has arrived earlier.
And to show proof that they let anybody into base camp, my next door neighbor is some redneck named Bud. Oh, yeah, they want the neighborhood.
Soon after their arrival, a puja prayer ceremony is held. It is a ceremony that is considered very sacred by the Sherpas, and climbing Sherpas will not sleep on the mountain until the puja has been completed. As expedition leader, Bill is asked to sit next to the Buddhist priest, or Lama. He blesses the expedition, including the climbers, the Sherpas, the food, the equipment, and every aspect of the expedition. While the Lama reads scripture, juniper is burned and rice is scattered by the Lama, the Sherpas, and the climbers. Food is placed at the top of the pole, and it is considered good luck if a large black bird or gorak lands on the pole. At the end of the ceremony, the climbers and the Sherpas perform a puja dance. But despite the very auspicious puja ceremony, there was very sad news in camp.
In the early afternoon, we received word of the first death on Everest. A Sherpa died in base camp before the climbing even began. We don't have details on the cause of death, but we know that he'd been sick for several days. Please include his family in your thoughts and prayers. May God rest his soul.
Well, Mount Everest is unforgiving. And what Bill Burke is doing at age 70 is just remarkable. It's really an inspiration. To think that somebody at that age could summit a mountain like this is an inspiration to everybody. And just goes to the notion that just because you turn a certain age doesn't mean you're destined to hit the 18 holes on the golf course for the rest of your life until death becomes us.
While they were there, 2 new members of his team arrive. 2 brothers from the Czech Republic. They describe themselves as older climbers. But when Bill tells them his age, they reply in amazement that such numbers have not been invented yet. And when Bill tells them of his double summit attempt, one of them said, "This is good. I like crazy people." Several days after Bill's arrival at base camp, a meeting of the expedition leaders is called, and plans are made to fix lines on the mountain all the way from base camp to the summit.
Everest is different every season, and every season team leaders all get together and have these meetings and we sit and work out how they're going to solve this season's problems, who's going to be responsible for the fixed roping, who's going to be responsible for any rescues that need to be undertaken. This year definitely is a more difficult year than any other season that we're on the mountain.
Every year, the fixed ropes to the summit must be replaced before it is safe for teams to climb.
So my plan is to wait for the lines to be fixed to the summit. Right now there's lines fixed up to Camp 3 on the Lhotse face, and the plan is to have the lines fixed all the way to the summit by May 5th. We'll have to see if that's how it works out. All that depends, of course, on weather. They can't fix lines if there's extreme weather on the mountain, but the plan is to have them fixed by May 5th. And as soon as the lines are fixed to the summit, and as soon as we get a really good weather report, then I'm going to make my move up.
Unfortunately, some of the climbers that have gone ahead are not faring well, keeping the doctors at the Himalayan Rescue Association tent busy.
There have been avalanches, and we had some avalanche victims. There have been other medical problems, and there are a lot of unusual medical problems, I would say. Also, young people having stroke and heart attacks up here, and also a lot of blood clots.
At last, Bill is ready to be underway. But before setting out for Camp 1 and Camp 2 on his first acclimatization rotation, Bill takes a moment to send his family a message. Ollie is on his mind.
Will someone please give Ollie a big hug and kiss for me? He probably wonders where his papa is. I would also appreciate it if someone would take him on a bike ride on the weekend. He loves that. Don't forget to pick up the new flag for the bike trailer. That flag is needed for safety. Love, Bill.
And with that, Bill and his Sherpa begin their move up the Khumbu Icefall for their first rotation.
A lot of people wonder why you move up and down the mountain. Why not just move all the way up to the summit in one big push? And the reason for that is that there's a third of the oxygen on the summit of Mount Everest as there is at sea level. So if you were to be helicoptered up to the summit, for example, without having acclimatized properly, you'd probably be unconscious in 3 or 4 minutes and dead in 5 or 6 minutes, because there just isn't enough oxygen in the atmosphere sustain life. So the way we compensate for that is we move up in stages, or rotations, typically 3 or 4 rotations. And it's called climb high, sleep low. And what that means is you move up your first rotation to Camp 1, and then you come down. And then several days later, you'll move up to Camp 1 and Camp 2, spend a few days there, sleeping at Camp 2, and then come down. And you may even do a third rotation where you go up to Camp 3 and come down. And what's happening there is that as you move up the mountain, your body senses the lack of oxygen in the atmosphere and builds red blood cells, or hemoglobin, to compensate for the decreased oxygen. And that's called acclimatization. So as the oxygen level as you move up decreases, your red blood cells increase.
Hey, Billy.
But not long after Bill and his Sherpa leave, an event that strikes fear in every climber takes place. Avalanche.
We just got word there's been a major avalanche up above Camp 1. It took out the tents. One person's been swept into a crevasse. Apparently there's a rescue team heading up that way to Camp 1 now. We have no more information than that. We just know the rescue teams are heading up, and we're hoping for the best.
The team can only wait and pray that Bill, his Sherpa, and the other people on the mountain are alive and uninjured.
Passan, just looking our campsite. Tents. So I'm just lying in the tent. We're listening to the radios. We have no update. I'm not quite sure what's going on at this point. This really wasn't the Everest experience that I was looking forward to. But at this point, we got our fingers crossed.
They hear one person has been blown into a crevasse, and another has sustained throat damage from inhalation of ice and snow, but the victims have not yet been identified.
We hope the part of our team that's up at Camp 1 and Camp 2 is okay.
A later report reveals that the climber that was rescued from the crevasse has been airlifted to the hospital in Kathmandu with severe back injuries. Bill's fate is still unknown.
Just stand by and wait to hear more. It's not an easy process.
Finally, they receive word Bill and his Sherpa are alive. After 4 days acclimating at Camp 2, Bill and his Sherpa are ready to climb back down to base camp. But now, they have another, perhaps more dangerous challenge: getting back down.
There's a ladder that crosses a giant crevasse just above Camp 1. It's actually 2 ladders that are strapped together. And I could tell when I got to the ladder with my Sherpa that it was not stable. It wasn't well secured on either side of the crevasse, and that worried me a little. So my Sherpa went ahead of me, and I watched him, and I held the ropes for him as he crossed the ladder. And he had some difficulty. He got about 3/4 of the way across, and the winds hit him. And I could see the ladder moving under his feet, and his legs were wobbling. He did make it across, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm nixed. I got on the ladder, and I got about 4 steps in, and sure enough, the ladder was moving under my feet. And then I had some crosswinds blowing sideways that created a lot of difficulty, because now I've got the ladder moving under my feet, and I've got crosswinds trying to push me off sideways. I made it across, but boy, it had my heart a-thumping.
Bill quickly recovers from his first rotation, and now can't wait to go up again.
I feel terrific. I generally acclimatize pretty well to high altitude. And all the climbs I've done, I have not really gotten serious altitude sickness. And the same is true this year. Feeling really good.
But the line fixing is not going so well because of the lack of snow on the mountain. Without hard snow pack to hold the rocks in place, there is a serious risk of rockfall on the steep sections of the mountain, beginning with the Lhotse face above Camp 2. Many injuries are being reported. As days pass, conditions on the mountain deteriorate, and it becomes clear that the May 5th target date to fix the lines to the summit will not be met. Without fixed lines in place, no one can ascend the mountain, and critical weather windows will be missed. This will result in traffic jams after the lines are fixed, as hordes of climbers move up the mountain at the same time, trying to take advantage of future weather windows. These traffic jams can prove deadly because long waits in the depth zone above 26,000 feet can deplete the climber's energy and supplemental oxygen and expose the climbers to hypothermia as temperatures plummet.
Normally on Everest you have on the south side anywhere from 8 to 12 days, which are good summit window days. So the weather window is what it's called. And you may have anywhere from, 3 to 4 of those weather windows that consist of 8 to 12 days. It got compressed down to only 4 days. So as a result, now you have hundreds of climbers, Sherpas and Westerners, trying to go to the summit over a 4-day period.
To make matters worse, on May 7th, veteran Everest guide Russell Bryce declares Everest unsafe to climb and pulls his entire team off the mountain.
Unfortunately, this resulted in line fixing delays since Russell's team of Sherpas were heavily involved in the line fixing activities on the mountain. So I had a tough decision to make. Do I wait for the lines to be fixed on the south side, which would mean a late May summit, or do I abandon my south side climb and move over to the north side? I decided that if I was only going to get one summit in this season, I wanted it to be on the north side of the mountain, since I already summited from the south side in 2009. I was really concerned about two things. First, a late May summit on the south side would preclude an attempt to climb the mountain from both the south and the north sides. Second, line fixing delays can mean traffic jams on the mountain, and traffic jams can prove deadly.
This year's been a busy year. We've had some interesting cases and the mountain is behaving a little bit differently. There's quite a lot of hazards which maybe haven't been there in other years.
People are climbing in an area that's where the jet stream's located. And the best climbing window for Everest is usually May. And there's usually about 5, 6, 7 days that the jet stream, which usually has winds 70, 80, 90, 100 miles per hour, there's usually a small period of time where the winds become 10, 15, 20 miles per hour, which are reasonable winds for climbers. So that's the very unique nature of Everest, that it sits in the jet stream and there's just a handful of days in the entire year that are climbable. There was a really tiny window right before May 20th where it appeared that a lot of groups went up. Usually there's a window early in May for groups to go up, but the ropes were not ready. So I think, from what I understand, that created some issues. That again, the window closed real quickly this season, and that created quite a bit of havoc in the climbing route.
Around May 19th, Dr. Erich Eberhard Schaff from Germany, who was one of the members of Bill's South Side team, summited. But because he could not get down in time, he collapsed at the foot of the Hillary Step and died of cerebral edema. At least 7 others met similar fates. Bill returns to Kathmandu and then continues on toward Tibet.
The main difference between working on the north side as opposed to the south side is that on the north side it's much more difficult to work because we have to deal with the Chinese authorities. And many times the permissions have to come from Beijing, and so there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape associated with that.
Bill reaches the border between Nepal and Tibet on May 12th. Just getting across the border proves to be an ordeal.
Just about to cross the Friendship Bridge. It's a rough ride up here on the roads in the mountains of Nepal. Most of them aren't paved, it's dirt and rocks. But this is the border town. And if you look up there, you see a line of trucks. Those are trucks waiting to pick up gear or commercial goods or whatever from the Nepal side, or to send products over to the Nepal side. Very inefficient system. They do not let the trucks cross the border either way, into Tibet or out of Tibet. So all the trucks have to be emptied of their goods. The goods are then carried in the backs of locals
to the other side of the border, either Tibet or Nepal, and then loaded on trucks and sent up or down as the case may be. Very inefficient. They could simply let them drive through, but that doesn't happen.
Finally, they escape the traffic, and Bill continues on through Nyalem and Tangri as Everest and other mountains loom ever closer.
Along the way, we stopped to rest, and out of nowhere, a group of children showed up. I don't know where they came from, and they lined up at the car for candy. And then a cart drawn by a donkey pulled up, and a little girl jumped out of the cart and got in line.
Finally, on May 13th, Bill gets his first glimpse of his next challenge.
Our first look at Mount Everest, north face, almost there, Chomolungma, Mother Goddess of the Earth.
And within minutes, Chinese base camp is within sight. Bill now faces another critical decision. The weather report calls for good weather on the summit from May 17th through the 18th, increasing winds on May 19th, and heavy winds on May 20th, as the jet stream repositions itself directly over the mountain. In order to put himself in position to summit on May 19th, Bill will need to move aggressively from Chinese base camp to high camp on the north side every day. This is no small task for any climber, much less Bill, who is 70 years old and has already pushed himself hard on the south side of the mountain. On May 14th, the day after arriving at Chinese base camp, Bill moves up to intermediate base camp. Then on May 15th, he moves to advanced base camp, which is situated at 20,000 feet. Bill struggles up the rocky trail, across a river, and then relentlessly up a hill on a climb that seems to take forever. He arrives at advanced base camp totally exhausted. In order to position himself at high camp for a May 19th summit bid, he must move up the steep head wall to Camp 1 on the North Col the very next day.
I desperately needed to take a rest day at advanced base camp. So I took that rest day and decided to make my summit attempt on May 20.
After resting, Bill joins his Northside team. He discovers the Chinese have made good progress in fixing the lines to the summit. The next morning on May 17th, the weather is coming in faster than expected, and the winds have picked up. Bill and his team know that they have to make the summit soon, or it will be impossible. At daybreak on May 17th, Bill and his Sherpas start their move to Camp 1 on the North Col. The climb is uneventful, and they spend the night.
Happy. How are you today?
Enjoying my juice at North Col.
At daybreak the next morning, Bill and his Sherpa move up from North Col to Camp 2.
As we made our way up the mountain, we could see the plume of ice and snow that was being whipped by nearly 100-mile-an-hour winds at the summit.
The weather has dramatically changed. Heavy winds and steady snow pound Bill for the last 5 hours of the climb. They press on, finally reaching Camp 2 just before dusk. The weather is rapidly deteriorating, and they know they have no time to lose. On the morning of May 19th, they leave for Camp 3. Bill and his Sherpa are pounded by heavy winds and snow. Despite exhaustion, they press on. They arrive at Camp 3 at 5 p.m., with Camp 3 situated at 27,224 feet. It is not safe, so they rest a couple of hours and then continue on at 8 o'clock that night.
The route from Camp 3 to the summit involves a climb up the north face of Everest to the exit cracks. At that point, the route turns right and involves a long traverse along the northeast ridge to the summit. There are 3 famous landmarks along the traverse: the first step, the second step, and the third step. All of these require somewhat technical rock climbing, which is made much more difficult by altitude, fatigue, and weather.
The weather is bad and continues to deteriorate with each passing hour. They encounter wind, snow, and extreme cold.
We made it pretty easily up to the exit cracks, turned right, and began the traverse along the northeast ridge. With the light of my headlamp, I could see sheets of snow and ice blowing horizontally all around me.
His eyebrows and eyelids are caked with frozen snow and ice, causing zero visibility and extreme pain. Ice and snow pellet his eyes like buckshot. He can feel his hands freezing inside his heavy expedition gloves, and at times he has to slap his hands against his down suit to keep the blood flowing and his hands warm. As he struggles to move his legs forward, he gasps for air. Every breath is painful, and he thinks of his grandson Ollie, how he goes through the same thing every day of his life.
As I was moving up, I could see with my headlamp bodies of climbers, some of them from that season, alongside the route up to the summit. And it was a very sobering experience for me. I've seen bodies on the mountain before, but when you pass them as you're moving up, it's pretty sobering.
Bill continues on. The instant he stops moving, his body begins to shake uncontrollably as it tries desperately to protect its vital internal organs from freezing. Bill looks up in the direction of the summit and can see the lights from the headlamps moving up the triangular face. The lights are not far from where he is sitting, but at that moment, they might as well have been on another planet.
As I was resting at the second step in this maelstrom of wind, snow, and ice, I asked myself two questions. First, can I make it to the summit? And second, if I make it to the summit, can I descend safely? The answer to the first question was a very confident yes. I knew I could make it to the summit. The answer to the second question was maybe. I was feeling physically and mentally strong, so I knew I could make it to the summit. But my concern was that if my condition or the weather deteriorated significantly, I would not be able to make it back down safely to a lower camp.
He thinks about his family and the bodies he has seen on the way up, and then makes the decision to end his summit attempt.
Huh? We better go. Go down? Yeah. Down? Okay.
Bill did not know it, but just a few feet above him, at the second step, a climber descending from the summit was freezing to death, and on the other side of the mountain, 4 other climbers perished on the southeast ridge, including his teammate, Dr. Eberhard Schaff. It has been one of Everest's most deadly seasons, and though Bill didn't achieve his goal of being the first person ever to double summit on Everest, at least he's alive and able to climb another year.
Climbing big mountains, like what Bill does and I do and so many other people do, is a gift. Very few people really get to go climb them. Being up on a high mountain, looking at the summits, looking down the top of other mountains, is an opportunity to recognize who we are, to find yourself. It's an opportunity to recognize the relevance of your life, who's important to you in your life, what your life really is.
Bill Burke shocked his family and friends, advising them that his journey was not over.
I think Bill's plan to climb this mountain when he's 72 is awesome. I mean, it's quite amazing that he would even undertake such a thing. But it inspires because if he can even get halfway up the mountain, it's going to be amazing.
Bill returned to Kathmandu in April 2014. 2014 was a sad year on Mount Everest, as 19 people perished on the mountain, the most deaths in its storied history. 16 Sherpas died in the single worst accident in mountaineering history when an ice serac collapsed on the south side, just above the Khumbu icefall. Bill, unaware of the extent of the events on the south side, pushed up the mountain and accomplished what many thought was impossible. And at the age of 72, and in the deadliest year on Mount Everest, was determined to complete something he started years before. Bill summited the north side of Mount Everest at 9:45 a.m. on May 25th, breaking his own age record as the oldest American to summit Mount Everest, and became the oldest person outside of Asia to summit Mount Everest. In recognition of Bill's accomplishments and his love of the people of Nepal, the government of Nepal named a mountain after him in the fabled Himalayan range. Burt Khan is a 22,114-foot peak located between Mount Everest and Choi Oyu. Burt Khan is a border peak since it straddles the countries of Nepal and Tibet. It is an unclimbed mountain, so Bill is organizing an expedition to climb his mountain in 2015.